Welcome to the Swine Nutrition Black Belt Podcast, the latest swine nutrition research digested for you. My name is Clayton Chastain, your host for today's episode. Today we have with us Dr. Kara Dunmire, a recent Ph.D. graduate from Kansas State University. So Kara, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me on today, Clayton, and I'm really happy to be here to share some research with you guys. I'm a recent doctoral graduate, like you said, from Kansas State University in the feed science department. And I'm about to share a little bit more today about the research that I did while I was there. I'm originally from southwestern Pennsylvania and did my undergraduate degree in food science from Penn State, and then my master's degree in swine nutrition from Texas A&M University. And currently I'm a Process R&D Scientist with Purina Animal Nutrition, Land O'Lakes, operating out of the Animal Nutrition Center in Gray Summit, Missouri.
Gotcha. So let's talk about some of that research that you did at KSU. So I saw a few studies that you worked on about pelleting, ingredient quality, amino acid stability, and swine diets. Would you mind diving into that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I focused a lot on the pelleting process. And so we utilize the pelleting process in the swine industry to ultimately decrease feed wastage while improving some of those performance metrics. And through this process, we're subjecting this complete feed to heat and moisture through steam addition, and then also some pressure and shear forces as this feed is being forced through the die hole. So this, in combination with current swine formulation trends, when we're trying to ultimately achieve a least cost formulation, we're adding in free amino acids or crystalline amino acids to decrease that higher cost soybean meal and bring in some more of those byproduct ingredients as well, which have reducing sugars such as glucose. And so this combination of the pelleting process, as well as current diet formulation trends in the swine industry, potentially creates that perfect storm to create that Maillard reaction. And so the Maillard reaction, when we think about this, is utilizing free amino acid or amine binding sites. So when we think about lysine has 2 free amine binding sites, which creates the potential for this to be utilized more freely in this reaction. And then we also have reducing sugars such as glucose. So these amine sites and reducing sugars potentially could bind that lysine and limit availability for digestibility and performance. And so that's how we basically landed on our overall objective, which was to manipulate diet formulation with different byproduct ingredients. And we used bakery meal and DDGs, as well as crystalline amino acids, and how that would influence amino acid digestibility and growth performance for late nursery pigs and growing pigs. So we knew that the most important part of this study was going to be getting that diet formulation right. And so we utilized a 2x2x2 factorial and used main effects of diet forms. So we had MASH or pelleted diets, as well as crystalline amino acid level, low or high. And that was provided by increased inclusions of crystalline amino acids, and then reducing sugar level, low or high, which was provided by byproduct ingredients, DDGs, and bakery meal at 20 and 15% respectively. So we had a total of 8 treatments with 4 different formulations. And so they were either MASH or pelleted. And from those 4 formulations, we had low crystalline amino acids, low reducing sugars. We had a diet with low crystalline amino acids and high reducing sugars. The third formulation was high crystalline amino acids, low reducing sugars, and then the fourth would be high crystalline amino acid and high reducing sugars. And so we did 2 studies where we looked at amino acid digestibility, and then the second was growth performance. So in the first study, our pelleting conditions were focused on hot pellet temperatures, so that we utilized a 185 to 190 hot pellet temperature in order to maintain consistent throughput through that pellet mill. And here we looked at digestibility with Dr. Hans Stein group out of the University of Illinois. And so we utilized an 8x8 Latin square design and collected that digesta in order to analyze amino acid content. And so we found that there was no three-way interaction among main effects. We did find that there was a feed form by reducing sugar interaction for SID tryptophan, and then no other two-way interactions. And so in general, we found that for the main effects of SID amino acids were improved when pigs were fed pelleted diets compared to mash diets. When pigs were fed those crystalline amino acid levels, there was little to no effect for those SID amino acids. And when pigs were fed high reducing sugar diets, there was a decrease in SID amino acid digestibility compared to low reducing sugar diets. And so that kind of leads me into the second study, where we looked at those same diets, so that 2 by 2 factorial, and utilized hot pellet temperature standard in order to maintain pellet mill throughput. And so again, we did not see any three-way interaction or two-way interactions when it came to growth performance metrics. And from an individual main effect perspective, we did see improvements in feed efficiency when pigs were fed pelleted diets compared to mash diets. And overall, pigs fed those pelleted diets had similar average daily gain compared to those fed mash diets. And then pigs fed those high reducing sugar diets had reduced feed intake, resulting in reduced gain and improved feed efficiency. So ultimately, to summarize both of these studies, we were unable to create the Maillard reaction enough to essentially bind lysine or inhibit growth performance or amino acid digestibility with the reported conditions that we utilized.
So some studies that I read earlier show denaturation happens fully around like 180 degrees Celsius, but of course, like partial denaturation and the force from the pelleting process can play a factor in there. And then I was reading that the pelleting process itself usually maxes out at like 80 degrees Celsius. So did you guys record any temperatures when you were doing the pelleting process at all?
Yes, we did. And so we looked at temperature from a conditioning standpoint, as well as hot pellet temperatures. So when you think about hot pellet temperature, that's including those frictional forces as pellets come off the die. And so in general, you get you do get an increase in temperature as pellets come off the die as well.
Gotcha, but it just wasn't enough with the pressure and everything else to create that Maillard reaction with the two amine groups on the lysine.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Well, I know you're graduated, you've working for Purina now, but do you know if your plan continues to do any more research with the pelleting process like this?
Yeah, so the feed science group at K-State continues to do pelleting research. They do everything from, feed safety to digestibility and growth performance. So there's a lot to be learned and a lot that they've put out in recent years as well.
Gotcha. Well, we'll look forward to that, but I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing the results of your study with us. And everyone else, thank you for listening to the Swine Nutrition Black Belt podcast. Please visit us at swinenutritionblackbelt.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you won't miss out on the next episode. See you next week. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we are constantly on the lookout for the latest updates in swine nutrition. And if you have a swine nutrition related research trial that you would be able to share on our podcast, please send an email to nutritionblackbelt@swineit.com, and we would love to talk about your research. See you later.